They dragged Bryn to the center of the clearing in nothing but the torn linen shift she had been wearing when they pulled her from the cellar. 200 wolves watched. The autumn equinox moon hung low and copper red above the tree line, casting everything in the color of old blood. The air smelled of pine smoke and roasting venison and the particular electric tension that came before a storm, or a reckoning. Bryn's bare feet scraped against gravel. Her hands were bound behind her back with rough hemp rope. Not because she would run. She had learned months ago that running was pointless when you had nowhere to go. They bound her because it was tradition, because wolfless prisoners did not get to walk into their own sentencing with dignity intact. Alpha Dorian Blackthorn stood on the ceremonial platform at the clearing's edge. He wore formal leathers, the Thornvale crest embossed in silver across his chest. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Handsome in the way that monuments are handsome. Cold, distant, untouchable. Beside him, draped on his arm like an ornament, stood Isolde Ravencrest. 24 years old, golden-haired and perfectly poised, the chosen Luna, the acceptable replacement. Bryn felt the hollow collar around her throat grow heavier. It was just thin iron. It weighed almost nothing, but it had crushed her entire world. The wolves in the crowd did not look at her. That was the rule. You did not look at the wolfless. You did not speak to them. You did not acknowledge they breathed the same mountain air as wolves who belonged. Bryn pressed her bound hands against the small of her back and felt the smooth river stone hidden in the waistband of her shift. The moonstone, her mother's last gift. It was warm against her skin, warmer than it should be, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the scar where a mate bond used to live, something stirred. Not a wolf. Not yet. Something patient. Something that had been waiting a very long time. 3 months earlier, Bryn had stood in a different clearing on a different night, and Dorian Blackthorn had held her hand in front of his entire pack and called her his mate. The bond had been real. She had felt it. The electric pull beneath her ribs. The way his scent, cedar and smoke and cold iron wrapped around her like a second skin. The way her pulse matched his when he stood close. The way the world narrowed to just the two of them when their eyes met across a crowded room. It had been real. She had believed it was forever. The celebration had lasted until dawn, wolves howling under the stars, bonfires throwing sparks into the night sky. Dorian's mother, the Dowager Blackthorn, had smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. The council elders had raised their glasses in dutiful toast, and Bryn, foolish and young and desperately in love, had thought that love was enough. She learned otherwise exactly 6 days later. The council met in the stone chamber beneath Thornvale's great hall. Bryn was not supposed to be there. She had been looking for Dorian, worried because he had been distant all day, avoiding her eyes. She found him. She also found 12 elders seated around a table, and Dorian's mother at the head, and the conversation that shattered everything. A wolfless Luna. The Dowager's voice was silk over steel. You would make this pack the laughingstock of the Northern Territories. Silence. Bryn waited for Dorian to argue, to defend her, to say what he had whispered to her the night before, that she was his and nothing else mattered. He sat with his jaw tight and his eyes on the floor. The bond is real, one elder said carefully. The goddess does not make mistakes. The bond is inconvenient. The Dowager placed her hands flat on the table. Dorian is 26. He needs heirs, strong heirs. This girl has no wolf. She cannot shift. She cannot run patrol. She cannot produce children with any certainty of strength. Another silence. Longer this time. There is precedent, the Dowager continued. Article 9 of the old laws. A bond may be rejected if it endangers the pack's future. Bryn's hands trembled against the stone wall. Mother? Dorian's voice, finally. But it was not the voice of a man in love. It was the voice of a man being reasonable. The bond is already seated. Rejection would be painful? Yes. The Dowager folded her hands. For both of you, but it can be done, and it must be done, unless you wish to be the alpha who lets sentiment destroy his pack's standing. Dorian said nothing. The elders looked at each other, and Bryn, hidden in the shadows of the corridor, felt the first crack in her heart. Not the bond breaking, not yet, just the terrible understanding that the man she loved was not going to fight for her. She left before the meeting ended. She did not confront him that night, or the next day. She waited some desperate part of her, hoping he would come to her, tell her it was all a misunderstanding, that he had told the council no. He did not come. On the third day, she found him in the training yard. Is it true? Her voice shook. She hated that it shook. Are you going to reject the bond? Dorian looked at her. Not with anger, not with cruelty, with pity. That was worse. I have a responsibility to this pack, he said quietly. I can't choose you over their future. I never asked you to choose. Tears burned hot on Bryn's cheeks. I asked you to fight for both. His jaw worked. For a moment, one flickering moment, she saw pain in his gray eyes. Real pain. The kind that meant this was costing him too. But then his mother's voice echoed from the hall behind them, calling his name, and the pain shuddered away behind duty and resignation. I'm sorry, Dorian said. He rejected the bond the next morning, formally, in the great hall, in front of the entire pack. Bryn had felt the snap. A fishhook ripped from the soft meat of her heart. She collapsed. No one caught her. Afterward, they moved her to the cellar beneath the kitchens. They gave her the hollow collar thin iron that marked her as incomplete, defective, less than. They reassigned her rank to the lowest tier. Scullery wolf. Though she had no wolf to speak of, she scrubbed pots. She hauled firewood. She slept on a straw pallet that smelled of mildew and mouse droppings. And every night she pressed her face into the dark and tried not to remember the way Dorian's thumb used to trace the line of her jaw. The cellar was not a dungeon. It was worse. A dungeon would have been an acknowledgement. A prison for someone dangerous. Someone worth containing. The cellar was simply the place where Thornvale put things it no longer needed. Broken furniture, cracked pottery, wolfless girls who had made the mistake of believing they mattered. Bryn's space was a corner behind the stairs. 6 feet by 6 feet, a straw pallet, a thin wool blanket, a clay pitcher for water that she had to refill herself from the pump in the kitchen yard. The hollow collar never came off. She felt it every moment, not because it was heavy, because it was a constant whisper against her skin. You are nothing, you are no one, you do not belong. The other wolves in the pack house walked past her like she was furniture. The kitchen omegas who worked the scullery were careful not to speak to her directly. They left her tasks written on slips of paper. Scrub the roasting pans, haul wood for the ovens, empty the ash bins. She worked in silence. She ate her half ration of bread and thin soup in silence. And at night, when the kitchen fires were banked and the house went quiet, she took the moonstone from its hiding place beneath her pallet and held it in both hands. It was smooth as glass, pale gray with threads of silver running through it like veins. Her mother had pressed it into Bryn's palm the night before the fever took her. Hold it when you're afraid, her mother had whispered. Feel how warm it gets. That warmth is mine. Bryn held it now and felt the impossible heat bloom against her palms. Not the heat of a living hand. Something else. Something that throbbed in time with her heartbeat. She did not understand it. She only knew that when she held the stone, the cellar felt less like a tomb. On the 28th night, Bryn heard footsteps on the stairs. Light, careful, not the heavy tread of the kitchen master checking stores. She sat up on her pallet, heart hammering. A figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Slender, female, wrapped in a dark cloak. The figure pushed back the hood. Isolde Ravencrest, the chosen Luna. Bryn's breath stopped. Isolde looked around the cellar with an expression Bryn could not read. Disgust, pity, something else. I need to speak with you, Isolde said quietly. Bryn said nothing. What was there to say? This woman had taken her place, stood beside Dorian at the high table, wore the silver circlet meant for a Luna's brow. Isolde stepped closer. Her golden hair was loose around her shoulders. She wore a simple dress, not the formal gowns she usually appeared in, and her eyes up close were not cold. They were sad. I don't love him, Isolde said. The words hung in the damp cellar air. Bryn stared. I don't love him, Isolde repeated. My family arranged this. The Ravencrest pack needed an alliance with Thornvale. I was the price. Why are you telling me this? Isolde reached into her cloak and pulled out a small leather-bound book. Old. The cover cracked with age. Because I found this in the Thornvale archives. It belonged to your mother. Bryn took the book with shaking hands. Her mother's journal. She had not known it existed. Page 47, Isolde said. Read it. Bryn opened the journal carefully. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded but still legible. Her mother's handwriting. Familiar loops and slants. She found page 47. The moonstone is not a stone at all. It is a lunar seed, formed once per century in the roots of the goddess's first tree. I found it the year before Bryn was born. The healers told me I would never carry a child to term. My wolf was dormant, broken, they said. But the seed changed everything. It protected Bryn in the womb. It will protect her still, when she is ready, when the true king comes. Bryn read the passage 3 times. Lunar seed, dormant wolf, true king. I don't understand, she whispered. Isolde knelt beside the pallet. I think your mother knew something the rest of us don't. I think your wolf isn't absent. I think she's sleeping, waiting. For what? I don't know. But Isolde hesitated. The Dowager has been planning something. The autumn equinox ceremony in 2 months. She's sending invitations to every major pack in the territory. She wants to present Dorian and me formally. Solidify the alliance? Why are you telling me this? Because I see the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. Isolde's voice was barely above a whisper. The bond is broken, but he still feels it, and it's killing him. But his mother, she shook her head. The Dowager Blackthorn is not a woman who accepts defiance. She will make sure you stay in the cellar. She will make sure you never have the chance to. Footsteps above. Heavy this time. Isolde stood quickly. I have to go. Keep the journal hidden. And Bryn. Whatever happens at the equinox, be ready. She pulled the hood back over her head and slipped up the stairs like a shadow. Bryn sat alone in the dark, holding her mother's journal and the moonstone, and felt the stirring in her chest grow stronger. The days became a rhythm. Scrub, haul, empty, sleep, repeat. Bryn moved through the pack house like a ghost. The other wolves looked through her. The kitchen omegas left her tasks and walked away. But on the 32nd night, one of them stayed. A girl, young, 15, maybe 16, dark hair in a braid, thin wrists marked with the telltale indentation of a hollow collar. She waited until the kitchen was empty, then crept down to Bryn's corner with something wrapped in cloth. I'm not supposed to talk to you, the girl whispered. But Here. She pushed the cloth bundle into Bryn's hands and fled back upstairs before Bryn could speak. Bryn unwrapped it. A bread roll, still warm, stolen from the ovens, and a scrap of paper with words scrawled in shaky handwriting. My name is Wren. You are not alone. Bryn held the bread and the note and felt something crack open inside her. Not the bond. Something older. Something that tasted like hope. Wren came back the next night, and the night after that. She never stayed long. Just long enough to bring bread or cheese or once a precious apple. Just long enough to whisper a few words. There are 11 of us, hollow collar wearers. We're not allowed to meet, but we know about each other. The Dowager watches us, makes sure we don't talk. But we're still here. We're still breathing. On the 40th night, Wren brought something else, a piece of information. The equinox ceremony, she whispered. It's not just a presentation. The Dowager is inviting someone important, someone from the royal court. Who? I don't know, but the kitchen staff are terrified. They're preparing for 50 extra guests. Hunters brought down 3 deer today. The Dowager ordered wine from the southern vineyards. Wren glanced over her shoulder nervously. Whatever this is, it's big. After she left, Bryn took out the moonstone. It radiated heat against her palm, alive. And for the first time in 2 months, she felt something other than grief. She felt anticipation. The weeks crawled by. Bryn worked. Wren visited when she could. Isolde did not return, but Bryn read her mother's journal cover to cover memorizing every word. Her mother had written about dormancy, about wolves who did not surface until their 20s, 30s, even later, about the lunar seeds that protected them, about a prophecy that Bryn did not fully understand. When the Hollow Queen rises, the old chains will shatter, but the new crown will demand sacrifice. Bryn traced the words with her finger and wondered what her mother had meant. And then 3 days before the equinox, Bryn saw Dorian. Not from a distance, up close. She was hauling wood from the storage shed to the kitchen when he walked past. His boots crunched on the gravel. He wore training leathers. His dark hair was damp with sweat. He stopped. Bryn froze, arms full of split logs, heart pounding. For 5 heartbeats, they stood 3 feet apart, and the air between them vibrated with everything unsaid. Dorian opened his mouth, closed it. His gray eyes held hers, and Bryn saw something she had not expected. Regret. Deep, aching. The kind that lived in marrow and never fully healed. Bryn. Alpha Blackthorn. The Dowager's voice cut through the moment like a blade. She appeared from the direction of the great hall, her posture perfect, her smile cold. The council is waiting. Dorian's jaw tightened. He looked at his mother, back at Bryn, and then without another word he turned and walked away. The Dowager remained. She looked at Bryn the way one looks at a stain on fine fabric, with distaste, with the quiet certainty that it would be removed. The equinox is in 3 days, the Dowager said. You will remain in the cellar. You will not be seen. You will not be acknowledged. Do you understand? Bryn said nothing. I asked you a question. Yes. The word tasted like ash. The Dowager smiled. Good girl. She walked away, her skirts whispering against the gravel, and Bryn stood alone with her armload of wood and the moonstone burning hot against her skin beneath the collar. The night before the equinox, Bryn could not sleep. The cellar was cold, the straw pallet damp, but the moonstone was so warm it was almost uncomfortable. She held it in both hands and felt it pulse. Once, twice, 3 times. And then she heard it, a voice, not out loud, in her head, or deeper, in the space beneath her ribs where the mate bond used to sit. "He's coming for you." Bryn sat bolt upright. The cellar was empty, silent except for the distant drip of water from a crack in the foundation. She looked at the moonstone. It glowed, faint, silver white, like moonlight trapped under ice. "He's coming for you," her mother's voice. She was sure of it. Bryn pressed the stone to her chest and felt her heartbeat sink with the pulsing light. And somewhere above 3 floors up in the great hall, she heard the first sound of the celebration beginning. Music, laughter, the clatter of dishes, and the low rumble of conversation. The equinox had arrived. Bryn was not permitted to attend. She stood in the rain outside the kitchen door and listened to the world she used to belong to celebrating without her. The rain was cold. It plastered her hair to her skull and soaked through the thin linen shift until she shivered. Her bare feet sank into mud. The hollow collar grew slick against her throat. She could smell roasting venison, wood smoke, the sweet bite of spiced wine. She could hear Dorian's voice raised in a toast, the crowd's answering roar. And she stood in the rain and the dark and held the moonstone and waited, though she did not know what she was waiting for. The hours passed. Midnight came and went. The rain thickened. And then at 1/4 past the witching hour, Bryn heard something that made her blood freeze. 3 horn blasts, long, deep, resonant, the signal for a visiting sovereign. The music inside the hall cut off mid-note. Silence crashed down like a falling wall. Bryn's fingers tightened on the moonstone. It burned, hotter than ever, hot enough to hurt, and the voice in her head whispered again. "He's here!" The great double doors of the hall burst open. Golden light spilled out into the rain. Wolves poured onto the steps, their faces confused, alarmed, thrilled, terrified. And then he stepped through the doorway. Tall. That was the first thing Bryn noticed. Taller than Dorian by a full head, broad through the shoulders, dark hair cropped close, a face that could have been carved by a sculptor with a grievance, all hard angles and sharp edges. He wore no crown, no ceremonial armor, only a long black coat that moved around his legs like smoke. But his eyes were molten gold. Lichen gold, the color of the first bloodline. The wolves who had ruled since before history found a pen. Bryn's breath stopped. Every wolf on the steps dropped to one knee, including Dorian, including the Dowager, including Isolde, who pressed one hand to her chest as if to slow her racing heart. King Caspian Nightshade, the most powerful wolf in the known world, and he was looking directly at Bryn. She felt the impact of his gaze like a physical blow. Heat cascaded from her collar down to her fingertips. The moonstone in her hand pulsed so hard she thought it might crack. Caspian moved down the steps. 1 step, 2, 3. Each footfall landed like a verdict. The crowd parted for him without being told. He crossed the rain-soaked courtyard with the unhurried patience of a predator who had never needed to rush. Water dripped from his dark hair. His coat was soaked through. He did not seem to notice. His golden eyes never left Bryn's face. 20 feet away, 15, 10. Bryn could not move, could not breathe, could not think. 5 feet. He stopped. Up close, he was overwhelming. The heat of him, the scent of him, pine and rain, and something darker, something electric like the air before lightning struck. The way his eyes held hers with an intensity that bordered on worship. "Who?" Caspian said, and his voice was low resonant, the kind of voice that did not need volume to command armies. "Put a hollow collar on my mate." The words detonated across the courtyard like a grenade. Silence. Total. Screaming. Silence. Bryn's knees buckled. She caught herself on the doorframe, heart slamming against her ribs so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Mate," he had said, "mate." 200 wolves turned to stare at the wolfless scullery girl in the soaked linen shift. Dorian stood slowly. His face had gone the color of old parchment. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Your Majesty," his voice was steady, admirably steady. "There must be some mistake. She has no wolf. She is mine." Caspian did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The alpha command in that single word pressed every wolf in the courtyard an inch closer to the ground. Even Dorian flinched. Caspian turned back to Bryn. His expression softened. A crack in the granite. Brief, devastating. He reached for the collar. Bryn flinched. Caspian paused. His hand hovered an inch from the iron circlet, and something in his face shifted, gentled, became almost human. "May I?" he asked quietly, softly, as if they were alone. As if 200 wolves were not watching. "I will not touch you without permission." Bryn stared at him. Her throat ached. Her hands shook. The moonstone hummed warm against her palm. She nodded. Caspian's fingers closed around the collar and snapped it like a twig. The sound was small, a dry, clean crack, no louder than a walnut splitting, but it rang through the courtyard like a cannon shot. The two pieces of iron fell to the mud and lay there, dull, ordinary, stripped of whatever terrible authority they had carried against Bryn's skin for 3 months. Air touched her throat, cool, clean, unobstructed. Bryn gasped at the sensation, the absence of weight, the raw tenderness of skin that had not breathed in months. Her hand flew to her neck, fingers tracing the groove the collar had worn into her flesh. She was shaking, not from cold, from something she could not name, something that lived in the space between terror and relief. Caspian held the broken pieces in his palm. He looked at them the way a man looks at something he intends to remember. Not with rage, though rage was there banked and glowing beneath the surface, but with the cold, cataloging attention of a king taking inventory of an injustice he would not allow to stand. He dropped them. They hit the mud with a wet sound. Every wolf in the courtyard flinched. "We leave tonight," Caspian said. He was looking at Bryn, but the words were for the hall, for Dorian, for the Dowager, for every wolf who had walked past Bryn like she was invisible. "Pack nothing. She takes nothing from this place." He paused, stepped closer, and pulled Bryn into his arms, carefully, as if she were made of glass, as if she might shatter. His hand cupped the back of her head, his coat wrapped around her like a shield, and he lowered his mouth to her ear and whispered just for her words that would later echo through every pack hall in the Northern Territories. Let him watch what he lost. Then he kissed her, not gently, not tentatively, a claiming, a declaration, a line drawn in fire across the history of Thornvale Pack. The bond ignited, not the fragile thread she had felt with Dorian. This was a river, a torrent, a wall of sensation that roared up through her feet and exploded behind her eyes in a cascade of gold light. Bryn gasped into his mouth. Caspian's fingers tightened in her hair, and every wolf in the courtyard felt it. The bond, snapping into place with the weight of a thunderclap. When Caspian lifted his head, the courtyard was utterly still. Dorian's face was ashen. Isolde had taken 3 steps back, one hand pressed to her mouth. The Dowager's iron composure had cracked. What lay beneath was something Bryn had never seen in the woman's face before. Fear. "She comes with me," Caspian said. His arm remained around Bryn's waist, steady, anchoring. "Tonight." No one argued. No one moved. Caspian looked down at Bryn. His golden eyes were warm now, almost amber. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly. Bryn's legs were shaking. Her entire body was shaking, but she nodded. "Then walk with me." He kept his arm around her, supporting but not carrying, letting her move under her own power. They crossed the courtyard together. 200 wolves parted for them like water around stone, and Bryn, barefoot in the rain, soaked and shivering and holding a moonstone that throbbed like a heartbeat, walked out of Thornvale Pack with the king of wolves at her side. Behind them, Dorian stood in the rain and watched, just watched. And when they were gone, when the 3 black vehicles disappeared into the fog at the end of the long drive, he sank to his knees in the mud and pressed both hands to his chest where the ghost of a broken bond still ached. The Dowager Blackthorn stood on the steps and smiled, a small, cold smile, as if everything had gone exactly according to plan. The convoy traveled through fog so thick it seemed alive. 3 black vehicles, headlights carving pale tunnels through the dark. The mountain road twisted like a serpent's spine, climbing higher into ranges Bryn had only seen from a distance. She sat in the back of the middle vehicle wrapped in Caspian's coat. It smelled of him, pine, wood smoke, something darker and electric like the air before a storm broke. The coat was still warm from his body. Bryn pulled it tighter and tried to remember how to breathe. Caspian sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched but not crowding. He had not spoken since they left Thornvale's gates. Neither had she. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 people processing something too large for language. Bryn turned the moonstone in her fingers. In the dim glow of the dashboard lights, she could see its surface more clearly than ever before. Not gray as she had always thought, faintly iridescent, like captured moonlight trapped under ice. "That stone," Caspian said quietly. Bryn's fingers stilled. It was my mother's. May I see it? She hesitated. The stone was the last thing she owned that could not be taken. Or so she had told herself. But the bond hummed between them, patient and warm, and she opened her palm. Caspian leaned forward slightly. His golden eyes narrowed, then widened. Do you know what this is? Bryn shook her head. It's a lunar seed. The words meant nothing to her. Her confusion must have shown because Caspian continued, his voice dropping into a register that was almost reverent. Lunar seeds are only found in the Silverroot Forest, at the base of the goddess's first tree, the place where legend says she first gave wolves their spirits. He paused. They're not stones. They're calcified pieces of the tree's root system, shed once every 100 years. Bryn stared at the stone in her hand. 100 years. They resonate with dormant wolves, Caspian said. They regulate dormancy, keep it from destroying the host, but they also prevent awakening until conditions are right. What conditions? Safety, a true bond, a place where waking would not mean immediate danger? His jaw tightened. In Thornvale, surrounded by wolves who treated you as less than nothing, your wolf stayed asleep to protect you. Surfacing in a hostile pack without an alpha's protection would have been a death sentence. Bryn looked at the lunar seed. All those years, the mockery, the collar, the quiet devastation of believing she was broken, and her wolf had been there the entire time, curled in the dark, waiting. Her eyes burned. My mother knew, she whispered. Your mother was smarter than every wolf in that pack combined. Bryn closed her fingers around the seed and pressed it to her chest. She could feel it pulsing against her sternum, a slow, steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Beneath it deeper, she felt something else, a stirring, faint as the first movement of a child in the womb, a presence, warm, wild, hers. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Caspian's hand found hers in the dark. We're going to Obsidian Reach, he said, the capital. You'll have your own quarters, your own space. No one will touch you, command you, or collar you. He squeezed her hand gently. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, we'll see about waking her up. Why? The question broke out of Bryn before she could stop it. Why do you care you're the king? You could have any mate, a Luna from one of the great packs, someone whole, someone who isn't you. Caspian's thumb traced a circle on the back of her hand. The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Bryn. She gave me a mate who survived rejection, a collar, and a cellar without losing her capacity for kindness. His voice was quiet, absolute. Do you think I would trade that for political convenience? The words hit her like a fist to the chest, not because they were harsh, because they were the first words in 3 months that had not treated her as a problem to be solved. Bryn leaned into his shoulder. She did not plan it. Her body simply yielded to the warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart, the way the bond sang between them like a tuning fork struck against bone. Caspian rested his chin on the top of her head and said nothing. The bond hummed, not demanding, not urgent, just present, a quiet, persistent warmth, like sunlight on a stone wall. Bryn had spent so long being cold. Outside, the fog thinned. The mountains gave way to rolling foothills, and in the distance, lit by the first gray light of dawn, Bryn saw the silhouette of Obsidian Reach, spires and battlements. The great dark shape of the palace crouched against the sky like a wolf at rest. She held the lunar seed and felt her wolf stir again. Closer now, warmer, waiting. Obsidian Reach was not what Bryn expected. Thornvale had been stone and wood, functional, built for defense and practicality. The palace was art, black stone that gleamed like polished glass, towers that climbed toward clouds, gardens that sprawled across terraces green even in autumn, water features that caught the light and threw it back in silver fragments. Beautiful, overwhelming. The convoy stopped in a courtyard paved with dark slate. Guards in formal leathers stood at attention. A woman with iron gray hair and a scar bisecting her left eyebrow approached as Caspian stepped out. Morrigan, Caspian said. This is Bryn Ashworth, my mate. She is to be given the East Wing quarters. Full privacy. No one enters without her explicit permission. The woman Morrigan looked at Bryn with eyes the color of storm clouds. She did not smile, but she inclined her head with a respect that felt genuine. My queen, Morrigan said. Bryn flinched at the title. Morrigan's expression did not change. You survived a rejection and a cellar. That takes strength most warriors never find. You have my respect. She turned on her heel and gestured toward an arched doorway. This way. The East Wing quarters were larger than the entire Thornvale cellar, Tall windows overlooked an inner garden. A bed so wide Bryn could stretch out her arms and not touch the edges. A fireplace already lit, casting dancing shadows across walls hung with tapestries. A bathing chamber with a copper tub deep enough to sit in. Bryn stood in the center of the room and felt unmoored, like a ship cut loose from its anchor. "A healer will visit within the hour," Morgan said from the doorway. "Her name is Thessaly. She'll examine you. Make sure you're well." Bryn nodded. She did not trust her voice. Morgan studied her for a moment. Then unexpectedly her expression softened. "Just a fraction. Give him a chance," she said quietly. "He's a good man, better than most." Then she left, closing the door softly behind her. Bryn stood alone in the vast room and felt the weight of everything crash down. 3 months in a cellar, a broken bond, a collar, and now, this, a palace, a king. A bond that sang in her veins like music she had never learned to read. She sank onto the edge of the enormous bed and pressed both hands to her face. And for the first time since the rejection ceremony, Bryn cried. Not the silent, suffocating tears of the cellar. Full, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. Grief and relief and exhaustion and hope all tangled together until she could not tell which was which. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she lay back on the bed wrapped in Caspian's coat and fell asleep to the sound of water fountains in the garden below. She woke to someone knocking, gentle, persistent. Bryn sat up disoriented. The room was dim. Evening. She had slept the entire day. "Come in," she called, her voice rough. The door opened. A woman entered, middle-aged with silver threading through dark hair pulled into a braid. Kind eyes. Healer's hands long-fingered and steady. "Bryn, I'm Thessaly. May I sit?" Bryn nodded. Thessaly settled into the chair by the fireplace. She did not approach the bed, did not crowd. "How are you feeling?" "I don't know." "That's honest." Thessaly smiled. "May I examine you, just basic health? I need to make sure the collar didn't cause lasting damage." Bryn touched her throat. The skin was still tender, raw. "Yes." Thessaly's examination was thorough but gentle. She checked Bryn's throat, her pulse, her reflexes. Asked questions about sleep, appetite, pain. When she finished, she sat back. "The physical damage will heal in a few weeks. The malnutrition will take longer. I'm prescribing rich broth sleep and what I call gentle reintroduction to the concept of safety." She met Bryn's eyes. "Your body has been in survival mode for 3 months. It will take time to convince it that the danger has passed." Bryn's throat tightened. "How long?" "As long as it takes. There's no rushing healing." Thessaly stood, paused at the door. "Your mother and I were friends," she said quietly. "Before the fever took her, she made me promise to watch over you if anything happened to her." Bryn stared. "You knew her." "I did. She was extraordinary. And she knew about the lunar seed. She told me once that you were meant for something important, that your wolf would wake when the time was right." Thessaly's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "She would be so proud of you." Then she left. Bryn sat alone in the firelight and held the lunar seed and tried to believe it. Caspian visited that evening. He knocked, waited for permission. When Bryn opened the door, he stood in the hallway with 2 cups of tea balanced on a tray, with the careful concentration of a man who had commanded armies, but was not entirely sure how to navigate a tea service. "You're awake," he said. "I slept all day." "Good. You needed it." He gestured with the tray. "May I come in? I brought tea." Thessaly said chamomile helps with sleep, but I also have peppermint if you prefer. Or I can leave, if you'd rather be alone. He was rambling. The most powerful wolf in the known world was nervous. Bryn stepped back. "Come in." They sat by the fireplace. Bryn took the chamomile. It was perfect. Not too hot. Sweetened with honey. For a while they sat in silence. Then Caspian said, "Ask me anything." "What?" "You must have questions. About me. About this place. About what happens now." He looked at her over the rim of his cup. "Ask. I'll answer honestly." Bryn considered. There were 100 questions tangling in her mind, but only one felt urgent. "Why haven't you found a mate before now?" Caspian's expression shuddered, just for a moment. Then he set down his cup and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I had one," he said quietly. 10 years ago. Her name was Adeline. She was kind, smart. We were not mates in the bond sense, but we cared for each other. We married for alliance, but we made it real." His hands clenched. "She got pregnant. We were so happy. Finally an heir, a family. The curse said Lycan kings could not have living children without their true mate, but we thought, maybe love was enough." Bryn's chest tightened. "She died in childbirth. The baby boy was stillborn. I held him for 10 minutes before his heart stopped. Caspian's voice was flat, factual. The tone of someone who had told this story so many times it had lost its edges. That's when I knew. The curse was real, and I would never have a child unless I found my true mate. He looked at Bryn. I've searched for you for 10 years. Every pack, every territory. And then I walked into that courtyard, and I saw you, and I knew. His eyes were bright, wet. Finally, I found you. Bryn set down her cup with shaking hands. I can't promise I can break the curse. My wolf hasn't even... I don't need you to promise anything. Caspian reached across the space between them and took her hand. I just need you to be here, to be you. Everything else, we'll figure out together. The bond pulsed between them, warm, steady. Bryn squeezed his hand. They sat like that until the fire burned low and the night deepened and Bryn's eyes grew heavy. Caspian stood. Sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. Caspian, he paused at the door. Thank you for asking permission, for everything. His smile was small, genuine. You never have to thank me for treating you with basic decency, Bryn. That's not a gift. That's the minimum you deserve. Then he left. And Bryn lay in the enormous bed and held the lunar seed and felt for the first time in months safe. The nightmares came that night. Bryn woke screaming, tangled in sheets, the collar tightening around her throat, even though it was gone. Dorian's pitying eyes, the cellar shrinking, smaller and smaller until it was a coffin. She could not breathe, could not knock at the door. Bryn, Caspian's voice, urgent. Are you all right? She tried to answer, could not force sound past the phantom collar. I'm coming in. The door opened. Caspian crossed the room in 3 strides, then stopped short of the bed. May I touch you? Bryn nodded, gasping. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her into his arms. One hand cupped the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist. Solid, real, warm. Breathe with me, he said quietly. In, hold, out. He breathed slowly, deliberately, and Bryn matched her rhythm to his. In, hold, out, again, and again. The panic receded. The phantom collar loosened. She sagged against him, shaking. I've got you, Caspian murmured. You're safe. The collar's gone. You're safe. He held her until the shaking stopped, until her breathing evened, until she pulled back embarrassed. I'm sorry, I don't apologize, never apologize for surviving trauma. He did not let go immediately, waited until she was ready. Do you want me to stay? I can sit in the chair, or outside the door, or I can leave if you prefer. Bryn looked at the vast empty bed, the shadows in the corners. Stay, she whispered. Please. Caspian settled into the armchair by the fireplace. He did not sleep, just sat there, a solid presence in the dark, and talked. About the constellations visible from Obsidian Reach's towers, about the wild horses that ran the eastern steppes, about the trade routes and the politics and the small ordinary things that filled a king's days. He talked until Bryn's eyes grew heavy, until she drifted into sleep this time, peaceful knowing she was not alone. By the second night, the screams had softened to whimpers. By the third, she slept through until dawn, and each night Caspian came when she called. Sometimes he sat outside her door, sometimes in the chair. Once when the nightmare was particularly bad, she asked him to sit on the bed. He did, held her hand, let her rest her head on his shoulder, and never once asked for more than she was ready to give. On the 5th day, Caspian asked, Would you like to learn to dance? They were in the library. Bryn had been reading curled in a window seat overlooking the gardens. Caspian had been working through correspondence at the desk. It was the most normal thing that had happened in weeks. Dance. There will be formal events, court functions. You don't have to attend if you don't want to. But if you do, it helps to know the steps. Bryn set down her book. I never learned. I know. Isolde mentioned you were not permitted to attend Thornvale celebrations. The casual mention of Isolde made Bryn's chest tighten. You spoke to her. She sent a letter, asking after you. She wanted to make sure you arrived safely. Oh. Caspian stood, crossed to the window seat, offered his hand. So, would you like to learn? Bryn looked at his hand, strong, scarred across the knuckles, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. She took it. He led her to the center of the library, moved a few chairs aside to create space. The basic waltz is simple. 3 beats, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. He positioned her hand on his shoulder, held her other hand in his. Follow my lead. If I step on your feet, you have permission to kick me. Bryn laughed. A real laugh. The sound surprised her. Caspian smiled. There it is. They moved slowly. Caspian counted under his breath. Bryn stumbled. He caught her. They tried again. You're allowed to take up space, he said softly. You're allowed to move like you belong here. Bryn met his eyes. I don't know if I do. You do, because I say you do. And I'm the king. So technically, I'm always right. She laughed again, stepped on his foot. See permission to kick me. Use it. They danced until the sun set, until Bryn's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling, and when they finally stopped, Caspian bowed, formally kissed her hand and said, You're a natural. You're a liar. I'm a king. We prefer the term diplomatically flexible. Bryn went to bed that night still smiling. On the 8th day, Isolde arrived. Bryn was in the garden when Morgan found her. You have a visitor, Isolde Ravencrest. She requests an audience. Bryn's heart jumped. She's here. In the south parlor. Shall I tell her you're unavailable? No, I'll see her. Isolde stood when Bryn entered. She wore traveling clothes. Her golden hair was braided simply. She looked tired and relieved. Bryn. She crossed the room, hesitated, then pulled Bryn into a hug. Bryn stiffened, then slowly hugged back. I had to make sure you were all right, Isolde said, pulling back. After that night, the way you left, I was so worried. I'm fine. I'm better than fine. They sat. A servant brought tea. Isolde wrapped her hands around the cup and took a shaky breath. I left Thornvale, she said. Dorian released me from the arrangement, the day after you left. He walked into the council chamber and told his mother he was done. Done with the politics, the manipulation, all of it. Isolde's eyes were bright. He freed the 11 hollow collar wearers, gave them land, voice on the council, abolished the collars entirely. Bryn could not speak. His mother is furious, but Dorian doesn't care. He's different, haunted. He walks past your old cellar and just stands there, staring, like he's trying to understand how he let it happen. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know, and because… Isolde set down her cup. I need your help. Dorian invoked Article 12, the old law. He's coming here to challenge Caspian's claim. Bryn's blood froze. What? He left 3 days ago. He'll be here tomorrow. He's not coming to fight. He's coming to ask your forgiveness. Publicly, in front of the king and the court. I don't understand. Isolde reached across the table and took Bryn's hand. He's not trying to win you back. He's trying to become the man who should have fought for you in the first place. This is his redemption, and he needs you to decide if you'll give it to him. Bryn found Caspian in the training yard. He was sparring with Morrigan. No armor, just speed and strength and the kind of controlled violence that came from centuries of breeding. They moved like water, like lightning. Bryn watched from the edge of the yard until they finished. Caspian saw her and immediately crossed over, wiping sweat from his face with a towel. What's wrong? Isolde told me, about Dorian, about the challenge. Caspian's expression went carefully neutral. Yes, he invoked Article 12 3 days ago. The old laws require I honor it. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I did not want to pressure you. The choice is yours, Bryn. It has always been yours. What if I choose him? The question hung between them. Caspian looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Then I will let you go, because love doesn't cage, it liberates. He stepped closer. But I will also spend every day until then showing you why choosing me might be worth considering. Bryn's throat tightened. Caspian touched her cheek, gentle, reverent. The trial will be held at the next full moon, 3 weeks from now. Until then, I would very much like to court you, properly, with flowers and terrible poetry and all the ridiculous human traditions that wolves pretend they're above. Despite everything, Bryn smiled. Terrible poetry. I'm told I'm quite bad at it. Would you like to hear? Absolutely not. Wise choice. He kissed her forehead, soft, chaste, and Bryn felt the bond hum, warm, certain. The next day, Dorian Blackthorn arrived at Obsidian Reach. He did not come alone. 11 wolves accompanied him, men and women of varying ages, all wearing silver bands on their upper arms where hollow collars used to sit. The freed. Caspian received them in the throne room, formal, official. Bryn stood at his right hand, Morrigan on his left. The court assembled in tiers around the hall. Dorian walked to the center of the floor and knelt, not to Caspian, to Bryn. I invoke Article 12, he said, his voice carried through the hall. The right to challenge a subsequent bond claim within 1 lunar cycle of rejection. Caspian leaned forward. And you understand the terms, at the next full moon, Bryn Ashworth will choose between us. Her choice is final and binding under the goddess's law. I understand. Then the challenge is witnessed. Dorian stood, but he did not leave. He looked at Bryn. May I speak to you privately? Caspian looked at Bryn, the question clear in his eyes. Your choice. Bryn nodded. They walked to a side chamber. Dorian closed the door, turned to face her. Up close he looked terrible, thinner, dark circles under his gray eyes, haunted. I'm not here to win you back, he said without preamble. I don't deserve you. I never did. I made my choice, and I will live with the consequences for the rest of my life. Then why come? Because I need you to know I see you now, truly see you, not as the wolfless girl who complicated my politics, as Bryn, the woman who survived my cruelty with grace intact. He gestured toward the door. Those 11 wolves, I freed them because of you. I abolished the collars because of you. I stood up to my mother for the first time in my life because of you. His voice broke. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back those 3 months. But I can show you I'm trying, every day, to be better. Bryn's eyes burned. At the trial, I will ask you to choose the king, because he's what you deserve. I'm just asking, can you forgive the man I was, so I can live with the man I'm becoming? Bryn looked at this broken, repentant alpha and felt something inside her shift. Not love. That was gone. Burned away in the cellar. But maybe mercy. I'll think about it, she said. Dorian nodded. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. He left, and Bryn stood alone and pressed the lunar seed to her chest and felt her wolf stir. Stronger now, closer, almost ready. The days that followed were strange, suspended, like the held breath before a plunge. Dorian stayed in the East Barracks. He trained with Caspian's warriors. He took meals in the common hall with the 11 freed wolves. He did not seek Bryn out. Caspian courted her. Flowers appeared in her room, wildflowers from the mountain meadows. Nothing formal or expensive, just beautiful. He wrote her notes. Terrible poetry as promised. So bad it made her laugh. Roses are red, violets are blue, I'm the king, and I've chosen you. She kept everyone. They walked in the gardens, talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told her about the weight of the crown, the loneliness of power, the nights he stood on the battlements and wondered if he would ever find someone who saw him as more than a title. She told him about her mother, about growing up believing she was broken, about the cellar and the collar and the quiet devastation of invisibility. And slowly, carefully, the bond deepened. Not just the supernatural pull, but real intimacy, built on trust and honesty and the simple act of showing up. On the 10th day, Thessaly came to Bryn's quarters with news. I ran blood work, like I promised. The healer's hands shook as she unrolled a scroll. Bryn, your bloodline. It traces back to the first Luna, the goddess's original chosen. Bryn stared. What does that mean? It means your dormancy isn't a defect. It's a maturation process. Your wolf is so powerful, your body needed 23 years to be strong enough to hold her. Thessaly's eyes were bright. When she wakes, Bryn, you won't just be a wolf. You'll be something else, something old, something we haven't seen in 1,000 years. What? A queen. On the 12th day, the Dowager Blackthorn arrived. Uninvited, unexpected. She requested a private audience with Bryn. Caspian wanted to refuse. Morrigan recommended guards, but Bryn said yes. They met in the library. The Dowager looked older than Bryn remembered. Lines etched deep around her mouth, gray threading her dark hair, but her spine was still iron straight. I will not take much of your time, she said. I came to give you this. She placed a small wooden box on the table between them. Bryn did not touch it. Open it. Slowly, Bryn lifted the lid. Inside was a hollow collar. Old, rusted, smaller than the one Bryn had worn. That was mine, the Dowager said. I wore it from age 16 to age 42. 26 years. No wolf, no voice, no value. Bryn looked up sharply. The Dowager's expression was carved from stone, but her eyes were wet. When my wolf finally woke, I had been broken by shame, by years of being told I was nothing. I survived, I rose, I became strong, but I never healed. She sat down heavily. I saw you and I saw myself, young, hopeful, bonded to an alpha. And I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear the thought that you might have what I never did. Love before the breaking. Her voice cracked. So I broke you first. I pushed Dorian to reject you. I convinced the council. I put you in that cellar. And I told myself it was for the pack's good. Tears tracked down her face. the Dowager Blackthorn crying. I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I am sorry. I cannot undo what I did. But I can give you this. She pushed the box across the table. Bury it with yours. Let the past stay buried. Bryn looked at the collar, at the woman who had destroyed her, and felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Thank you for telling me, she said quietly. The Dowager stood, paused at the door. For what it's worth, you are already more of a queen than I ever was. Then she left. Bryn sat alone with two collars and the weight of generational trauma and thought about the chains women wore, visible and invisible, and how breaking them required more courage than wearing them ever did. On the 20th day, the night before the trial, Caspian came to her room. He knocked, waited for permission. Walk with me, he asked. They walked through the palace gardens. Late, the moon 3/4 full. Almost time. Caspian led her to a quiet corner, a memorial stone, small, carved with a name, Adeline, and beneath it our son, beloved. Caspian knelt, placed his hand on the stone. I come here when I need to remember, he said quietly, when the crown gets too heavy, when I forget why I'm searching. He looked up at Bryn. I'm terrified, not of losing you to Dorian. I trust your choice, but what if the curse isn't broken? What if I lose you like I lost Adeline? His voice broke. What if loving you costs you your life? Bryn knelt beside him, took his face in her hands. Then we'll face it together. No more carrying grief alone. She kissed him, soft, chaste, a promise. And Caspian held her like she was the only solid thing in a world made of water. That night, Bryn could not sleep. She held the lunar seed and felt it crack, just a hairline, but real. Heat pulsed through her chest. Her wolf stirred, not sleeping now, pacing, circling, preparing. Tomorrow was the full hunter's moon. Tomorrow Bryn would choose, and tomorrow everything would change. She stood at the window and looked at the moon climbing toward fullness and whispered to the wolf inside her. I'm ready. Are you? The wolf did not answer, but the lunar seed pulsed, warm, alive, and Bryn knew. Tomorrow she would rise. The hunter's moon rose like a wound in the sky, full, bloated, copper red with the particular light that came once a year when autumn balanced on the edge of winter. The courtyard of Obsidian Reach was packed. Hundreds of wolves filled the stone galleries that ringed the space. Caspian's court, visiting alphas from neighboring territories, warriors, healers, elders who remembered when the old laws were not just tradition, but survival. And in the front row, wearing silver bands on their arms, sat the 11 wolves Dorian had freed. Bryn stood at the center of the courtyard. She wore white, not the torn shift of Thornvale, a simple linen gown that Thessaly had embroidered with tiny silver thread along the hem. The lunar seed rested against her chest on a leather cord, visibly cracked now, thin lines of golden light seeping through the fractures. Her feet were bare on the cold stone. Her hands were steady. She had spent the day preparing, bathing, braiding her dark hair simply, trying not to think about what came next. Caspian had come to her door at sunset. Whatever you choose, he had said quietly, I will honor it. That is my vow to you. She had kissed his cheek. I know. Now standing in the copper moonlight, Bryn felt her wolf beneath her ribs, not sleeping, not even pacing, coiled, ready, like a spring wound too tight, waiting for permission. To her right, 10 paces away, stood Caspian. He wore simple black, no crown, no ceremonial armor, just himself. His golden eyes steady on her face. To her left, Dorian, formal leathers, the Thornvale crest still embossed on his chest, though he no longer led the pack. His gray eyes were shadowed, resigned. Between them, Bryn, the fulcrum on which everything would turn. An elder stepped forward, white-haired, ancient. Her voice carried across the silent courtyard like a bell. Bryn Ashworth, you stand between two bonds, one broken, one new. The old laws require you speak your choice under the witness of the goddess and the full moon. But first the claimants may speak. She turned to Dorian. Alpha Blackthorn, you invoked Article 12. You may address the court. Dorian stepped forward. He did not look at Caspian, only at Bryn. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said. His voice was steady, clear, meant for every wolf present. I chose pride over love, power over person. I rejected you publicly. I collared you. I put you in a cellar and told myself it was for the good of the pack. He paused, swallowed hard. I was wrong. The pack did not need protection from you. It needed protection from me. from a leader who would destroy the most sacred bond the goddess gives us because it was inconvenient. He gestured to the 11 wolves in the front row. These wolves wore hollow collars under my rule. They were invisible, voiceless, less than. I freed them because of you, Bryn. I abolished the collars because of you. I learned to see people instead of problems, because you showed me what it looks like to survive with grace intact. His voice cracked. I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm asking you to witness what I've become, to know that your suffering was not meaningless. It changed me, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure it changes Thornvale too. He knelt, not in supplication, in respect. I broke the bond. You owe me nothing, but if you can find it in yourself to forgive the man I was, it would help me live with the man I'm becoming. Silence. The courtyard held its breath. Then the elder turned to Caspian. Your Majesty, you may speak. Caspian did not move toward Bryn, did not crowd the space. He stood where he was and spoke quietly, intimately, as if they were alone. Bryn, I won't list my qualifications as king. You know them. I won't promise you power or wealth or status. You've never wanted those things. He paused. I'll say this. I've spent 10 years searching for you, not for an heir, not for a cure to a curse, for the person who makes me want to be more than a crown on a throne. His golden eyes held hers. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we'll break the curse, if we'll have children, if we'll have 50 years together or 50 days. What I know is this. He took a breath. You are not broken. You were never hollow. And whether you choose me or not, I will make sure you are protected, honored, free, because that's what love does. It doesn't cage, it liberates. He did not kneel, did not bow, just stood, open, vulnerable, waiting. The elder turned to Bryn. The court has heard both claimants. Now, Bryn Ashworth, the choice is yours. Speak your truth under the goddess's eye. Bryn looked at Dorian, at the broken alpha who had learned mercy too late, at the 11 freed wolves who watched her with hope and recognition, at the path of redemption that wound behind him like a scar. She looked at Caspian, at the king who had asked permission to remove a collar, who had sat outside her door through nightmares, who had taught her to dance and written terrible poetry and shown her that safety could be real. Then she looked at herself, at the white dress and bare feet, at the lunar seed pulsing against her chest, at the 23 years she had spent believing she was incomplete, and she stepped forward, into the center, into the space that belonged to no one but her. For 23 years, she said, and her voice carried, I was told I was hollow, incomplete, less than. I believed it. I wore the collar in here, she touched her chest, long before anyone put iron around my throat. She turned slowly, addressing not just the two men but the entire courtyard, every wolf who watched, every hollow who had ever been made to feel small. But my wolf was never absent. She was waiting, not for a mate, not for permission, for me, for the moment when I would be strong enough to hold her power without breaking. The lunar seed flared, bright, hot. Bryn gasped. Heat flooded through her chest, down her arms, into her legs. The seed cracked, not a hairline, a fracture that split the stone in 3 pieces. Light poured out, golden, blinding, and the wolf inside Bryn uncoiled. 23 years of dormancy breaking open at once. The pain was extraordinary. Not clean, not quick. A tearing, a reshaping, bones snapping and reforming, muscles shredding and knitting back together, skin rippling as fur erupted silver white and gleaming. Bryn screamed. The scream became a howl. She dropped to her hands and knees. The white dress tore. The lunar seed fragments fell to the stone and lay there glowing like small suns. Every wolf in the courtyard stood. Caspian took a step forward. Morgan grabbed his arm, held him back. Let her finish, the beta hissed. Bryn's spine arched, claws extended, her jaw lengthened, teeth sharpened. The transformation took 3 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. When it finished, Bryn stood on 4 paws in the center of the courtyard, a wolf, larger than any she-wolf present, nearly beta-sized, her coat gleaming silver white under the copper moon. And on her chest, where the lunar seed had rested, a golden sunburst pattern burned into the fur. The goddess's mark, the proof. Bryn lifted her muzzle. Her eyes were still brown, human brown, but flecked now with gold. And when she spoke, her voice rang out telepathically, clear and strong into the mind of every wolf present. I choose myself first. The courtyard erupted. Gasps, howls. shock rippling through the crowd like a stone through water. Bryn turned her silver head toward Dorian. You broke me, but I survived. And in surviving, I found strength you never gave me permission to have. She paused. I forgive you. Not because you've earned it, because I deserve peace more than I deserve to carry your guilt. Dorian's eyes filled. He pressed one hand to his chest and bowed his head. Then Bryn turned to Caspian. The king had shifted, not slowly. The moment her wolf had spoken, his own had erupted forth. 8 feet of midnight black fur and corded muscle. His golden eyes blazed. Bryn crossed to him, pressed her silver head against his dark one. The bond between them rang out like a bell, visible, audible, a shimmer of gold light that connected their two forms and pulsed with the rhythm of twin heartbeats. Every wolf in the courtyard felt it. Dorian staggered back as if struck. His wolf whined inside him, not in challenge, in recognition. The bond he had broken with Bryn had been a thread. What stood before him now was a chain of light that could anchor worlds. Bryn's wolf voice spoke again, clear, certain. I choose Caspian Nightshade, not because fate demands it, because love asks, and I answer. She lifted her muzzle and howled. The sound started deep in her chest and climbed until it touched the moon itself. Pure, wild, the song of a wolf who had waited 23 years to sing. Caspian joined her. His howl harmonized with hers, 2 voices becoming one, and the bond between them flared so bright it cast shadows. Then one by one, every wolf in the courtyard lifted their voices. A chorus, a celebration, a witnessing. The Hollow Queen had risen, and the old chains had shattered. The elder's voice cut through the howling. The mate declares for King Caspian Nightshade. The challenge is concluded. The bond is witnessed by the goddess and the moon. Bryn shifted back. It was easier this time. Her wolf retreating like a tide, gentle and unhurried, leaving Bryn kneeling naked on the stone. Caspian shifted too. Human again. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders before she could shiver. Their eyes met. No words. None needed. He helped her stand, held her steady when her legs shook, and together they faced the court. Morgan was the first to kneel, then Thessaly, then the 11 freed wolves, then the entire courtyard, a wave of bending knees and bowed heads, for the hollow girl who had become a queen. Dorian left Obsidian Reach at dawn. Bryn watched from the east wing window as the convoy of vehicles wound down the mountain road, growing smaller, vanishing into the mist that pooled in the valleys below. She expected to feel triumph, satisfaction, relief. Instead, she felt the quiet, heavy grief of a door closing on a room where she had once kept precious things. Caspian came to stand beside her, silent. His hand found hers. He'll be all right, Caspian said quietly. He has work to do, and work can be its own kind of redemption. I know. They stood together as the sun climbed and the mist burned away, and the world became golden with new light. What happens now? Bryn asked. Caspian smiled. Now we build something better. The first decree was signed 3 days after the trial. Bryn stood at Caspian's right hand in the throne room, wearing a silver circlet that sat light on her brow. Not a crown. Not yet. A promise. Caspian read the decree aloud to the assembled court. By royal order, hollow collars are hereby abolished across all territories under Lycan rule. Any pact found in violation will face immediate sanctions. Furthermore, all individuals previously classified as hollow are to be evaluated by certified healers for dormancy. Treatment with lunar seed therapy, where available, will be funded by the crown. He paused. And finally, sanctuary will be established at Obsidian Reach for any dormant wolf seeking refuge. This sanctuary, to be called Lunar Haven, will be overseen by Queen Bryn herself. The court erupted in applause. Not everyone was happy. Bryn could see the resistance in some faces. The old nobles who believed tradition was sacred. The alphas who feared losing control. But the majority roared approval. After the ceremony, Morgan approached with news. 3 Western packs are refusing compliance. Riverstone, Iron Peak, Shadowfen. They claim the old ways are pack business, not crown business. Caspian's jaw tightened. Send envoys, not soldiers. Diplomacy first. And if they refuse, then we try again, and again, until they listen. Bryn touched his arm. Let me write to them. Caspian looked at her. Personal letters, from someone who wore the collar. Who understands? She met his eyes. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is truth. He nodded. Then write. Bryn wrote 3 letters that night. She did not threaten, did not command. She simply told her story. The cellar, the collar, the weight of invisibility, the way it felt to believe you were broken, and the moment of awakening, The proof that hollow was a lie the powerful told to keep the powerless small. She sealed each letter with her own hand and sent them with Caspian's fastest messengers. 2 weeks later, two of the three packs sent word. They would comply. The third Shadowfen remained silent, but their hollow wolves began appearing at Obsidian Reach's gates. Quiet, thin, blinking in the sunlight like prisoners emerging from underground. Bryn met each one personally, held their hands, looked them in the eyes, said the words she had needed to hear. You are not broken. You never were. Welcome home. Word came from Thornvale on the 20th day. Isolde Ravencrest had been named Alpha by unanimous council vote. Dorian had stepped down willingly, taken the position of head of security. He served now instead of ruling, and his first act in service was to hold a public ceremony, an apology to every hollow wolf who had suffered under his leadership. Thessaly attended. She brought back a report. He wept, the healer said quietly. In front of the entire pack, he named each of the 11 by name, acknowledged what was done to them, and vowed it would never happen again. She paused. It won't undo the harm, but it's a start. Bryn held the report and felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of release. The Dowager Blackthorn did not return to Thornvale. Instead, she liquidated half her considerable wealth and funded the establishment of the Dormancy Research Institute, headquartered in neutral territory, staffed by healers from every major pack. Thessaly was named lead researcher. Their first project, catalog every hollow wolf in the territories. Evaluate them, search for more lunar seeds. Within 2 months, they had identified 47 dormant wolves. 3 lunar seeds were located, ancient, powerful, already protecting their chosen hosts. The Institute sent word to each dormant wolf, offered sanctuary, treatment, hope. 19 accepted. Bryn welcomed them to Lunar Haven personally. Lunar Haven grew quickly. What started as a wing of the palace became a compound. Dormitories, training grounds, gardens specifically designed for meditation and healing. Morgan oversaw security, taught self-defense to wolves who had spent years being told they were weak. Thessaly ran the medical wing, monitored each dormant wolf's progress, adjusted treatments, and Bryn simply existed among them, not as a queen on a throne, as someone who understood. She held hands through nightmares, shared meals, told her own story over and over until it became a thread that wove through all their stories. You survived. That makes you strong. Not broken. 8 weeks after the trial, Thessaly came to Bryn with news that made the world tilt. You're pregnant. Bryn stared. What? 6 weeks along, maybe 7. The bond is fully seated, complete. Thessaly's hands shook as she held the test results. The curse is broken, Bryn. You're carrying Caspian's child. Bryn could not speak, could not breathe. Thessaly smiled through tears. Actually, children, plural. I'm hearing 2 heartbeats. Twins. The first living heirs born to a Lycan king in 300 years. Bryn found Caspian in the training yard, told him in front of Morgan and a dozen warriors who immediately erupted into howls of celebration. Caspian lifted Bryn off her feet, spun her in a circle, set her down carefully, reverently, as if she were made of glass. Then he pressed his forehead to hers and wept. Joy, relief, 10 years of searching, 10 years of grief, all of it pouring out in tears that soaked into Bryn's hair. We did it, he whispered. You did it. We did it together. That night they planted the 3 fragments of Bryn's lunar seed in the palace gardens. 3 pieces. 3 silver saplings that Thessaly said would grow into trees like the goddess's first. They named them Hope, for the freed, Healing, for the wounded, Home, for the lost. The coronation was held on the winter solstice. Simple, as Bryn requested. No excessive ceremony, no gold or jewels. Just Bryn in a silver gown standing before the assembled court while Caspian placed a crown on her head. Not the heavy, ornate piece traditional queens wore. A circlet of woven silver branches. Simple, beautiful, made by a craftsman from Thornvale sent as a gift from Isolde. Bryn Ashworth, Caspian said, his voice carrying through the hall. Once called Hollow, once collared and confined, now witnessed by this court and the goddess herself. I name you Queen of Obsidian Reach, protector of the dormant, voice for the voiceless. The court rose as one, and Bryn, who had once scrubbed pots in a cellar, stood before hundreds of wolves and felt the weight of the crown. Not as a burden, as a responsibility she was ready to carry. The twins were born on the first day of spring, a boy and a girl, healthy, strong, squalling with fury at being pulled from the warm dark into the cold light. Caspian held them both and wept. Bryn, exhausted and exhilarated, watched her mate become a father, and felt something complete inside her. Not the bond. That had been whole for months. Something deeper. The sense that she had not just survived. She had built a life worth living. They named the children carefully. The boy Aldrich, meaning old ruler, for the bloodline that stretched back centuries. The girl Lyric, meaning song, for the howl that had announced Bryn's wolf to the world. The curse was broken. The line would continue, and hollow wolves across the territories heard the news and dared to hope. 1 year after the trial, Bryn stood in the Lunar Haven garden and watched 23 dormant wolves circle the 3 silver saplings. The trees were 6 feet tall now, strong, their bark gleaming like moonlight, leaves rustling in a language only wolves could understand. Each resident placed their hand on a tree, shared their strength, whispered their hopes. And one by one, Bryn felt the stirring. Not awakenings, not yet, but the potential, the promise. These wolves would wake, in time, when they were ready. Caspian stood beside her, holding Lyric. Aldrich slept in Bryn's arms, his tiny fist wrapped around her finger. "You did this," Caspian said quietly. "We did this." Bryn looked at the 23 wolves gathered in the garden, at the 3 silver trees growing toward the sky, at her children sleeping peacefully in the sunlight. She thought of the girl in the cellar, the woman in the white dress, the queen in the silver crown, all the same person, all worthy, all whole. "They called me hollow," Bryn said quietly. "I call myself whole. That's not defiance. That's truth." Aldrich stirred in her arms, opened his eyes. They were golden, lichen gold. Bryn kissed his forehead and whispered the words she would tell him every day of his life. "You are enough, exactly as you are. That's my promise." The residents began to howl, not in pain, in celebration, a song that climbed to the sky and touched the stars. Bryn joined them, her voice strong, clear, the song of a wolf who had waited 23 years to sing, and in the distance in packs across the territories, other hollow wolves heard that song and lifted their own voices. A chorus, a rebellion, a revolution sung in wolf song. The awakening had only begun. Bryn stood at her window that night and looked at the moon. Full again, silver white, beautiful. Behind her, Caspian slept with the twins tucked between them in the enormous bed. Safe, warm, loved. In the garden below, the 3 saplings glowed faintly. Hope, healing, home. In Lunar Haven, 23 dormant wolves dreamed of the day their own wolves would wake, and in her chest, Bryn's wolf rested. Content, no longer waiting, no longer hiding, present, whole, home. Bryn pressed her hand to the glass and whispered to every hollow wolf who had ever been told they were less. "The collar is not the end of your story. It's just a chapter, and you get to write what comes next." The moon shone down. The saplings hummed, and somewhere in the territories, a young girl held a stone her mother had given her and felt it grow warm. The awakening was spreading, one wolf at a time, one choice at a time, one broken chain at a time, until the day when hollow was not a mark of shame, but a reminder of survival. And every wolf who had ever been called incomplete would stand tall and say the words Bryn had claimed for herself. "I am not broken. I was waiting, and now I am awake."